After 7 long years, the Varn Dominion had fallen. Across the galaxy, people cheered, planets lit fireworks, and soldiers returned home. But not all victories were clean. On the planet Carian Prime, the heart of the former Varn Empire, the winners gathered to claim their rewards. A special ceremony was held. The Great Hall was filled with alien nobles, human generals, and warriors from a dozen allied worlds. On the stage, hundreds of Varn prisoners were lined up, all once part of the cruel Dominion. Most of them were women scientists, officers, or nobles from royal bloodlines. They were given to the victors as spoils. The rule was simple. Each honored soldier could pick one prize. Some chose weapons made from rare crystal tech. Others picked beautiful alien women in shining robes. The hall echoed with claps, cheers, and laughter. Then came the turn of a young human soldier named Private Dallin Ward. He stepped forward quietly. His armor was old, scratched, and patched many times. Unlike the others, he wore no medals. Most didn't know his name. He wasn't a famous hero, just one of many who had survived the war. But as he walked up, his eyes searched the line of prisoners, and then he pointed to her, Dallin said, loud and clear. A silence fell across the hall. Everyone turned their heads to see the one he chose. She stood at the end of the line. A small, thin Varn woman with gray skin, a twisted spine, and deep scars on her face. One of her arms was shorter than the other. Her ears were torn. Her robes were plain and dusty. Some whispered her name Zura, a nobody. Maybe a failed servant or a failed experiment. Ugly, weak, and useless. Whispers turned into laughter. Even the Varn prisoners laughed bitterly. You must be joking, said a human officer. You want her? Dallin didn't smile. Yes, that's the one I want. She can't even walk. Straight, said a soldier behind him. She's disgusting, said another. But Dallin only nodded and walked to Zura. She stared at him with large, tired eyes. She didn't speak. Her hands were trembling as if she thought he might hit her. He didn't. Instead, took off his cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. The laughter stopped. Even the alien nobles were confused. Zura looked at the floor, her expression unreadable. No one had touched her kindly in years. No one had given her warmth. Dallin whispered, You don't have to be afraid. I know who you really are. Zura didn't answer, but she followed him as he led her off the stage. Later, that night, in a small army tent outside the city, Dallin made a simple meal. Ration packs, some warm water, and dry fruit. He placed the food on a crate and sat across from her. Zura sat still, not touching anything. You can eat, he said gently. I don't need your pity, she said quietly, her voice hoarse. It's not pity. Then what is it? Respect. She gave him a long look, confused and cautious. He didn't push. He just ate his own food in silence. After a while, she reached for the ration pack and took small bites. Her hands were still shaking. In the days that followed, Dallin made no demands of her. No orders, no shouting. Gave her space, let her rest, and spoke only when needed. Other soldiers stared at them wherever they went. Some joked, some whispered cruel things. She must have some secret power. They laughed. Maybe he likes monsters. But Dallin ignored them. Every night he opened a small metal box in private, and inside it was a data chip hold and half-burnt. He had found it during a raid deep inside a Varn lab months ago. He watched the video again. In it, a gray-skinned Varn woman helped human prisoners escape. She healed their wounds, gave them food, and opened the doors to their cells. She risked her life. The woman's face was damaged, but Dallin had studied it closely. It was Zura. She was no servant, no mistake. She had been a savior, one of the few in the Varn Empire who had chosen kindness over cruelty. He hadn't forgotten. One night, a group of soldiers stopped Dallin near the supply depot. Their leader, a tall man named Sergeant Cal, smirked. So Dallin, what's it like sleeping beside a freak? Dallin's jaw tightened. Watch your mouth. Come on, you could have had anyone. You picked that broken alien. You're a strange one. Dallin stepped forward. Say one more word and you'll lose a tooth. Cal raised his hands. Fine, fine, just joking, but one day you'll see. Monsters don't change. Back at the tent, Zura was waiting. She saw the anger in his eyes. What did they say? This time she asked nothing important? She studied him. You really don't see me as a monster? No, he said simply. I see a woman who made the hardest choice during the war. You saved lives. She lowered her eyes. No one believes that. I do. She looked up, surprised by the honesty in his voice. For the first time, she smiled. A weak, tired smile, but real. The next day, things changed. A message came from High Command. Someone had reported that Dallin's Prizero was a dangerous war criminal. They had no proof. But her appearance, her race, and her silence made her an easy target. A tribunal was ordered. She would be taken in 3 days for questioning and likely executed. Dallin stood outside the command tent, fists clenched. He had 3 days to figure out how to protect her. That night, Zura spoke first. I heard the order. I'll stop them, Dallin said. You can't stop a whole army. I'll try. Why? I'm not your kind. I'm not pretty. I'm not powerful. Not even useful. He looked at her. You're good, and that's enough. Zura's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said that to her. Not even her own people, she whispered. You're a strange human, Dallin Ward, he chuckled. You're a strange Varn, Zura. For the first time, they both smiled, but they knew the clock was ticking. In 3 days, the army would come for her unless they left first, unless they ran together. The sun was rising over the red hills of Carian Prime. Soldiers were waking, engines humming and orders echoing from the command tents. But Dallin Ward wasn't sleeping. He sat beside a small crate, his eyes fixed on a portable holotablet. Duh! Same damaged data chip played its flickering video again and again. It showed a gray-skinned Varn woman moving through a prison cell. She healed human prisoners with stolen supplies. She whispered soft words to a crying child. She risked her life to unlock their doors, and then she disappeared, chased by Varn soldiers. The face was blurred, burned by fire damage. But Dallin was sure. He knew that face.zir. She wasn't a servant. She wasn't a failure. She was a rebel, quiet, gentle, and brave. And now, the very people she had saved wanted her dead. Inside their tent, Zura sat on the ground, holding a mug of warm water. She had learned to keep her head low, to stay silent when humans passed. Her body still hurt from old wounds, some visible, some buried deep inside. Dallin entered the tent quietly. He had a bag over his shoulder. They'll come for you tomorrow, he said. Zura nodded. I know. We can't stay here. Already told you, she said. Don't risk your life for me. I already am, he replied with a calm voice. And I'm not stopping. She looked up at him. You're a soldier. They'll call you a traitor. They already laugh at me for choosing you. Let them call me whatever they want. Silence stretched between them. Why are you really doing this? She asked. Dallin sat down beside her, handed her the HOLO-tablet. She watched the video. Her eyes widened. I thought this was destroyed, she whispered. I found it in the ruins of the Varn medical base, Dallin said. I didn't know your name back then, and I remembered your face. I wasn't supposed to be recorded, she said. I helped those humans in secret. That's why I chose you. Zura's hands trembled as she handed the tablet back. No one else saw this? I did, and that's enough. She took a deep breath, then let's run. That night, Dallin changed into civilian clothes. He wore a thick cloak and carried a stolen transport pass. Zura covered her scars with cloth and a hood. Her short steps were slow, but she forced herself to walk without limping. They moved through the shadows of the base. Dallin avoided guard towers, picked routes he had memorized from patrol duty. He knew when the guards smoked, when the cameras lit. At the checkpoint, a sleepy officer asked for ID. Dallin handed him the fake papers. Medical transfer, Dallin said. Commander's orders. The officer squinted at Zura. She looks sick. Radiation burn, Dallin said quickly. We're taking her to Port Helix. The officer grunted. You're lucky it's my last shift. Go. The gate opened. They stepped through, and just like that, they were gone. 2 days later, they arrived at Port Helix, a massive space station floating above the frozen world of Elbrun. It was a city of smugglers, ex-soldiers, broken robots, and people with nowhere else to go. Humans, aliens, and hybrids walked side by side. No one asked questions. Dallin rented a small metal room in the lower sector. It had a bed, a sink, and a broken heater. Zura stood near the window, watching the lights of the city. Neon signs blinked. Music echoed from street markets. I never thought I'd see this place, she said. You're free now, Dallin said. Not really, she replied. There's a bounty on me, isn't there? Dallin nodded. Yes, Varn loyalists put it out. Now the human command has added her to the list of dangerous fugitives. Zura sighed. Helped both sides. Now both sides want me. Dead. Not everyone, Dallin said softly. She looked at him. Just you, she said. Dallin smiled. Sometimes one person is enough. The next day, Dallin got a message through his old army contacts. A friend named Juno, once a tech officer, now worked in the data black market. Juno met him in a dark cafe, filled with smoke and old music. Thought you were dead, Juno said, sipping green coffee. Almost, Dallin replied. I need help. You always need help, Juno laughed. Dallin placed the data chip on the table. I need this cleaned, restored, and copied. Juno scanned it. Whoa, this is Varn tech. Just do it. Okay for you? Give me 2 days. Back in the room, Zara was coughing. Her chest ached. I can't run forever, she whispered. And you can't protect me forever. I'll try, Dallin said, sitting beside her. But maybe you don't have to run. What do you mean? He opened a map of the refugee district. There are thousands of Varn survivors here. Poor, sick, and forgotten. You know their science. You can help them. They don't know me. They will. Over the next few days, Zura began to walk through the broken alleys of the refugee sector. She fixed broken heat units, healed infections, and taught children how to make water filters. At first, people feared her. Then they started thanking her. Then they started following her. She became a quiet, symbol-scarred woman in a hood who helped without asking for a reward. One day, an old Varn man said, You are one of the royal ones, aren't? Zura hesitated. Not anymore, but you care. That is more important than any crown. Back at the room, Dallin returned with the restored video. Juno had done a good job. The new version was clear. Zura's face was fully visible as she healed prisoners. This could change everything, Zura whispered, if we show it to the public. How? The bounty might be lifted, Dallin said. Or it might paint a target. On your back, too. I'm already marked. Might as well go all the way. Zura touched his hand. Her voice shook. You are a strange, stubborn human, and you are a brave, kind alien. They sat in silence for a long time. The next morning, someone knocked on their door. Dallin grabbed his blaster. Who is it? A voice replied. I come in peace. I heard about the healer. Zura opened the door. A tall Varn stood there, wearing armor from a lost war. His eyes were sharp. My name is Theric. I lead a group of Varn who seek peace. We've heard of you, Princess Zura. I'm no princess, she said quickly. To us you are, he replied. But we need more than a symbol. We need a leader. I'm not a leader either, she said. Tharik bowed. You're the only one who can be. After Thoric left, Dallin asked, Will you help them? Zura looked unsure. They want to rise again, she said. But rising through peace, not war. That is rare. You could guide them, or I could lead them into another disaster. You're not your father. You're not the Varn Empire. You're you. And that's what makes you powerful. She smiled. But far away, another man watched a screen. Commander Vosk, a human officer. Listen to reports. Zura has been found, a soldier said. She's alive. She's helping refugees. And Dallin Ward? With her? Wask's eyes narrowed. Send the bounty hunters. Full payment if they bring her in. Dead or alive. The lights of Port Helix never dimmed. Day or night didn't matter on the station. Neon signs blinked. Steam hissed from pipes. Voices shouted in a dozen languages, but Dallin Ward felt a storm coming. He sat by the cracked window of their small room, staring at the street below. People passed, laughing, trading, arguing, but Dallin's mind was somewhere else. He had just received a warning, a message on his communicator from an old friend in the army. They know. Run. Inside the room, Zura was fixing a broken heat fan. She sat cross-legged, her long fingers working quickly. You're quiet, she said without looking up. Dallin turned to her. We need to leave now. She paused. Why? Bounty hunters are coming. Human ones. Zura's hand stopped moving. Who sent them? Commander Vosk. He's putting pressure on the council to treat you like a traitor. Zira frowned. I knew he hated the Varn. But this, he's afraid, Dallin said. You're not just a survivor anymore. You're becoming something more. A symbol. Zura looked down. I didn't ask for this. I didn't have to. You earned it. They packed quickly. Dallin grabbed the holotablet, rations, and credits. Zura took her toolkit and a small bag of medicine. As they stepped out, Zura paused at the door. The refugees, she whispered. I can't leave them.
Ow.
Dallin placed a hand on her shoulder. If they catch you, you'll never help anyone again. We need to disappear for now. No, she nodded, but her eyes were heavy with guilt. In the streets of Sector 9, a small group of bounty hunters arrived. They were armed with stun rifles, scanner drones, and body armor. Their leader, Rigo, wore a long black coat and a metal eye. She's here, he said, looking at a glowing tracker. And so is the human. Orders, asked his second. Bring the girl in, dead or alive, Rigo said. Kill the man if he resists. Dallin and Zura slipped through back alleys, using hidden paths Zura had learned while helping the sick. They crossed over broken bridges and under old rail lines. They stopped inside a storage tunnel to rest. Zura leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Too slow, she said. You're doing fine. Dallin replied, I'm not built for running, she said, forcing a small smile. I'm not built for heroism, but here we are. She laughed softly. Suddenly, a loud buzzing filled the air. Dallin turned. Drones, he said. Zura looked up. They've found us. Dallin pulled out a blaster and shot the drone. It exploded in sparks, but too late. The signal was sent. They're coming, Dallin said. We need a place to hide. Zura's eyes lit up. I know a place. They ran through twisted streets until they reached a collapsed medical bay, once part of a Varn science lab. It had long been abandoned, but Zura remembered it. This was one of my labs, she said. Before the war ended, Dallin helped move rubble and open the broken door. Inside was dark and cold. Zura found a backup power cell and turned on the emergency lights. A soft blue glow filled the room. Dallin closed the door behind them and locked it. They sat on the floor, breathing hard. Zura looked around at the dusty walls. I created life-saving machines here. Now I'm hiding like a criminal. You're still saving lives, Dallin said. She smiled sadly. You really believe in me, don't you? Yes, he said simply. I saw what you did in the video. But more than that, I've seen who you are now. Zura's voice became quiet. Back then, I was supposed to create bioweapons. My father demanded it. I refused. He punished you. She nodded. He burned my skin, broke my spine, and sent me to the lowest labs. But even there, I helped who I could. Dallin clenched his fists. He called that weakness. But I call it strength. Zura reached out and took his hand. For a moment, he sat in silence. Then a sound echoed outside. Footsteps. Rigo and his team had found the lab, inside the control room. The sensor blinked red. They're in there, said a hunter. Rigo raised his rifle. Time to finish this. Dallin handed Zura the holotablet. If they get me, he said, get this out. Show the galaxy. Azura's eyes filled with fear. No, we do this together. The door burst open. Smoke grenades rolled across the floor. Dallin fired at the hunters, forcing them to duck. Zura grabbed a side panel and opened a hidden passage. This way. He crawled through a narrow shaft as blaster shots flew past them. Dallin's arm was grazed. He winced, but kept moving. Reached a lower tunnel and ran through dripping pipes and rusted ladders. Behind them, the hunters followed. Zura stopped suddenly. "Help me with this pipe," she said. Dallin understood. They turned the valve and hot steam burst out. Filling the tunnel behind them, the hunters screamed in pain. "We bought time," Zura said. But not much. He emerged into an old tram station. A single tram was resting on the track. "It still works," Zura said. "I fixed it last week." They jumped in. Dallin hacked the controls while Zura restarted the engine. The tram roared to life and shot forward down the dark tunnel. Back in the lab, Rigo wiped steam off his visor. They escaped again, a hunter growled. Rigo smiled coldly. "Let them run. They'll get tired eventually." Hours later, the tram stopped in the lowest sector of Port Helix called the Sink. Few lived here. It was quiet, dark, and forgotten. Zura helped Dallin bandage his wound. "You saved me again," he said. She shook her head. "We saved each other." He looked at her closely. "Zura, I don't care what you look like. I care about what's in here." Touched her chest gently. She whispered, "I don't deserve you. You deserve peace," he said. "And love." She leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, she felt safe. The next day, word spread through the refugee networks. Zura, the healer, had escaped death again. People began to whisper her name with hope, not fear. She was no longer the ugliest Varn. She was their queen, not by blood, but by heart. In the deepest level of Port Helix, where sunlight never reached and the air smelled of rust and damp metal, Zura stood before a crowd. Men, women, and children, Varn refugees with tired eyes and thin bodies, gathered around her. Some sat on old crates, others leaned against broken walls. They had nothing, no homes, no rights, no safety. But when Zura spoke, they listened. She stood on a broken platform with Dallin by her side. Her hood was off. Her face scarred, twisted, burned, was fully visible. She didn't hide anymore. "I was born in the Varn Palace," she said. "I had everything. Power, wealth, protection," people murmured. "But I gave it up," she continued, "because I saw what my people did to others. I saw children in chains. I saw planets burn, and I said no." She looked down for a moment, then raised her head. "I was punished, beaten, cast out. But I still had my hands, and I still had a heart. I used them to help the wounded, even humans. Even those we called enemies." Her voice grew stronger. "I am not perfect. I am not beautiful. But I have not stopped fighting for peace." She paused, then looked at the crowd. "You are forgotten by the world, but not by me. If you will walk with me, I will walk with you." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then someone clapped, then another, and then cheers rose up like thunder. "Queen. Zura, the healer queen." Zura closed her eyes and whispered, "I never wanted to be queen again." Dallin smiled beside her. "But you were born to be something more." Later that night, inside an old repair room turned shelter, Thuric visited again. He was tall, armored, and respected by the refugees. He sat with Zura and Dallin over a map made of cloth and metal. "There are over 10,000 Varn across Port Helix," Thuric said. "They trust you now. Many say you should lead them. Publicly." Zura shook her head. "If I speak too loudly, bounty hunters will come again?" Thuric leaned forward. "They'll come no matter what. The question is, do you face them alone? Or do you face them with an army of people who believe in you?" Zura looked at Dallin. He didn't speak. He let her decide. After a long moment, she said, "I will lead, but only to build, not to destroy." Over the next few days, the lower levels of Port Helix changed. Zura, Dallin, Thuric, and others worked non-stop, rebuilt broken shelters, fixed power lines, created food stations. Zura spoke to people every day, not like a ruler, but like a neighbor. She asked mothers about their children. She helped elders with pain medicine. She repaired water filters with her own hands, and people followed in the upper levels. This change was noticed. Commander Vosk watched reports on his screen. Zura is gathering people, his officer said. No weapons yet, but they're organizing. Vosk narrowed his eyes. She's dangerous. She hasn't attacked anyone. She doesn't have to. Symbols are more dangerous than guns. The officer hesitated. Should we send more? Hunters. Vosk stared at the blinking red dot on the map. No, he said. Send a strike team, full force. She becomes a queen. She becomes a threat. 2 nights later, a group of Varn elders arrived at Zura's shelter. They wore simple robes, their faces marked with the gold tattoos of the old royal line. They bowed before her. We were once loyal to your father, one said, but his time is gone. We come to ask, will you be our queen? Zura looked around the room. Dallin stood in the corner, silent but proud. Zura said, I will not sit on a throne. I will not wear a crown. But I will stand beside my people and fight for their future. The elders nodded. That is enough, they said. Later, Zura sat with Dallin on the edge of the old tram tunnel, their legs swinging over the darkness. She held his hand. You were the only one who believed in me when I was nothing. She said, You were never nothing, he replied. You were just waiting to rise. I'm scared, she whispered. He squeezed her hand. That means you still care. She smiled. And what about you, Dallin Ward? What do you want? Looked into her eyes. Just one thing. Stay beside you wherever you go. She leaned forward and gently touched her forehead to his. Then don't ever leave. I won't. The next morning, explosions rocked the sector. Smoke filled the air. Refugees screamed. Sirens wailed. Commander Vosk's troops had arrived. Dozens of armored soldiers poured into the tunnels, shooting stun rounds and tear gas. Dallin grabbed a blaster. They're here. Zura pulled up her cloak. Have to get the civilians out. They split up. Dallin led the defense. Dura helped evacuate families. Thorik organized young Varn into shield lines, using scrap metal and plasma tools. The battle was not clean. It was desperate. Zura ran into the fire, helping a wounded child. Her cloak burned, but she didn't stop. She saw Vosk's troops surrounding a family. Without thinking, she jumped between them. Stand down. She shouted. The soldiers hesitated. Then a laser blast hit her shoulder. She fell. Dallin saw her fall and screamed. He ran through the smoke, blasting his way to her. He reached her side, grabbed her hand. Zura, stay with me. I'm not dying today, she whispered. More explosions shook the walls, then something strange happened. One by one, the refugees rose up, not with guns, but with shields, tools, and courage. They stood beside Dallin and Zura, and the soldiers seeing. A wall of people united, fearless, began to fall back. Commander Vosk shouted, What are you doing? Fire? But his men hesitated, and then they dropped their weapons. The crowd gathered around. Zura Dallin carried her to safety. She was alive but weak. A medic patched her shoulder. She'll be okay, he said. Cheers filled the air. She stood for us. She protected us. Long live Zura. Later that night, Usqua was arrested. The video of the attack spread across systems. So did the recording. Dallin had saved Zura, saving human prisoners. Her name was now known across the galaxy. Not as a war criminal, not as a freak, but as a queen of peace. In the shelter. As Dallin sat beside her bed, Zura woke slowly. You stayed. She whispered. I always will, he said. I thought I would rise alone, she said. You didn't, he replied. You rose with all of us. Zura smiled, tears in her eyes, and Dallin, the soldier who chose the ugliest alien woman as his prize, now sat beside the most powerful heart in the galaxy, not because of war, but because of love. For the first time in many years, the lower levels of Port Helix were quiet. No soldiers marched through the streets.
Our bounty. Hunters hunted, shadows.
The refugees, humans, Varn, and others walked freely in the open. Glowing vents. Old men sat on crates and shared stories. Hope had returned, and at the center of it all was Zurwantz, the ugliest alien, now known as the Healer Queen. But she was still recovering. Inside a quiet medical shelter built from scrap metal and old ship panels, Zura lay on a bed made from soft cloth and wires. Her shoulder was bandaged. Her body still ached. But her mind was clear. She opened her eyes slowly, and the first thing she saw was Dalen, sitting beside her, asleep in a chair. He looked tired. His armor was dirty. Cut ran across his cheek. Zura smiled. She reached out and touched his hand gently. He woke up with a soft gasp. "Zura, I'm still here," she whispered. His eyes filled with relief. "You scared me." "You stayed," she said. "Of course I did," he replied. "I told you I won't leave." Over the next few days, news spread across the galaxy. Videos of Zura's speech, her bravery, and the day she stood against Vosk's forces were everywhere. The holotablet footage, her saving human. Prisoners went viral. People across planets spoke her name with respect. Former enemies now saw her as a bridge. Between two worlds, she wasn't just a Varn. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a leader of peace. On the 10th day, a special message arrived. A United Council ship requested permission to land. Inside were ambassadors, human, alien, and hybrid. They came to speak to Zura. Dalen helped her dress a long cloak made by refugee women, decorated with hand-stitched stars and Varn symbols. "You look like royalty," Dalen said. Zura raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was no longer a queen," he smiled. "You were never a queen because of blood. You're a queen because people chose to follow you." She took a deep breath. "Then let's meet the council." The council ship landed in the largest open space available, clearing near the old tram lines. A large crowd gathered. Refugees lined the rails. Holding lights and flowers, the ambassadors stepped out, tall humans in blue suits, glowing-skinned aliens from the planet Sitha, and even a pair of Zal warriors. Once feared enemies, Zura walked forward, supported by Dalen. Her steps were slow, but proud. One ambassador stepped forward. A woman named Lina, with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Zura of the Varn," she said. "We come not to judge, but to ask. Will you represent your people at the council? Will you speak for peace, not just here, but across the stars?" The crowd waited in silence. Zura looked around. She saw the faces of those who once had no voice. Then she looked at Dalen. He gave a small nod. Zura turned to the council. "I will come, but only if I bring others with me. The forgotten, the poor, the broken." "I won't sit alone," Lena smiled. "That is exactly why we want you." Over the next month, Zura and Dalen traveled across space with the council ship. They visited ruined worlds, war-torn colonies, broken stations. Everywhere they went, people gathered to hear her speak. She didn't speak like a politician. She spoke like a healer. "I was once called useless," she told a crowd on Kellen 4. "But someone saw my worth. Now I see yours." She showed her scars. She told her story. And everywhere she left behind hope, in the capital of the United Galactic Council. Zura stood before leaders from over 100 worlds. Her speech was simple. No one is born a monster. No one is born a hero. We choose who we become. To heal, I chose to forgive, and I was saved. Not by an army, but by one human man who saw me when no one else did. She looked at Dalen, who stood near the side. He smiled softly. The chamber gave her a standing ovation. After the speech, Zura and Dalen walked through the sky gardens above the council tower. Stars glowed above them. The air was fresh and cool. "Never dreamed I would stand here," Zura whispered. "You deserve it," Dalen said. "I didn't do it alone." "What?" "You did the hardest part, facing yourself." She looked at him, her eyes filled with something deeper than thanks. "Dalen, Ward, Why did you really choose me? Paused. Because I saw your eyes once on a burned data chip. You were helping others when you had no reason to. And I thought anyone that kind, even when broken, is more beautiful than anyone I've ever met. Zura's breath caught. You never cared about my scars? He stepped closer. I loved you because of them. They are proof you survived. They are proof you were stronger than the world that tried to break you. Tears rolled down her cheeks. And then, for the first time in her life, she kissed him. It was soft, warm, true. Weeks later, Zura returned to Port Helix, but she wasn't alone. The council now supported the rebuilding of the refugee zones. Supplies flowed in. Engineers arrived to fix old systems. The lower levels became alive again, not with fear, but with new beginnings. Zura continued to lead not from a palace, but from her clinic, and Dallin stayed with her not as a guard, but as her partner. They worked side by side. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat beside a fire pit, watching children play. Zura rested her head on Dallin's shoulder. Do you regret it? She asked softly. What, choosing me? When you could have had anyone else? He laughed gently. They chose gold, beauty, and power. I chose someone who saved the galaxy's soul and didn't even realize it. She smiled. You always say the right thing. It's because I meant every word from the start. Shh. Took his hand, and in that quiet, with the stars above and hope blooming below, the human soldier and the once ugly alien woman found peace. Not because they won a war, but because they healed what the war tried to destroy each other.